Here's 5 things that have changed between GDScript 1 and 2, along with 3 new features to GDScript 2 that you may want to know about. So first off, in GDScript 1, you had to manually create an object that referenced a function if you wanted to pass it around, which was done via the funcref class. In GDScript 2, we now have callables, which can work similar to funcrefs via manual function reference creation if desired, but they're also automatically created when a function is referenced by name, meaning you can now simplify your code a bit by just referencing a function by name and using the syntax myfunction.call when you want to call it. Next up, there's also been some changes to asynchronous code. In GDScript 1, we used the yield command to wait for an asynchronous bit of code to complete. This was commonly used to do things like wait for an animation or a timer to complete. We now use the await keyword instead. We just directly reference the signal we want to wait for rather than having to make a function call with a string parameter of the signal name. If you're really into asynchronous programming, there is a bit more that you might want to know about await, so be sure to check out the docs, but this should be enough to get a lot of you well on your way, so I'll leave it at this for now. To call a function from a superclass, we used to use the syntax .myfunction. We now instead use the super keyword, such as with super.myfunction. Another improvement with this new structure is that simply calling super will call the same function you are in from the superclass. This next one is a bit simpler, but the syntax for changing scenes in Godot 4 has changed slightly to make it a bit clearer which of the 2 functions you should use. In Godot 3 you had change scene for changing scenes by path, and change scene 2 for changing to a provided packed scene. In Godot 4, change scene is now change scene to file, and change scene 2 is now change scene to packed. Much clearer. The last change I want to talk about for GDScript 2 is annotations. So rather than using keywords to denote special functionality like we did in GDScript 1, such as typing export to make a variable editable in the inspector, we now use annotations, which begin with the @ symbol followed by the term you want. We also have some new terms for exporting that make it a bit clearer what you're doing. As an example, in Godot 3 we'd export a float within a range using this syntax. But now we can use the export range annotation to clearly define what we're doing. And note that annotations can be placed on their own line above your relevant code, on the same line as your code, or even share a line with other annotations. There's other options you have for exports as well, so be sure to check out the docs for more info. The other annotations, such as tool and onReady, are named the same as their previous keywords, so I'm just going to list them out here so you know what they look like now. And now, here's a few tidbits regarding some new GDScript functionality. First off is one that I'm particularly happy about. Rather than taking a variable that represents a value from an enumerator and having to type it as an integer, which would allow for invalid values to be set to it, enumerators can now be used as types, raising warnings or errors depending on how egregious you get with your code. As an example, setting the typed variable to an integer is valid, but it raises a warning just in case you're out of range, while setting it to the value of another enumerator will raise an error. Another big feature that's just now available in Beta 2 is the ability to use custom resources as an export type and get some help from the inspector when creating or setting that variable. No more having to scroll a giant list of every resource available in Godot. The last new addition I'll mention today is that of typed arrays, which is pretty self-explanatory. You can now specify what type of data should go in your array, and the engine will check your code for you. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching.